trending video of a possible short 3 to 4 foot extraterrestrial gray being that was filmed at a home security camera reportedly captured on March 29th, 2024 from the Skinwalker Ranch. Now, this image is one of the clearest ones I've seen thus far of one of these beings. Take a look at this quick video clip and image, and let me know your thoughts and comment below. This is a recent trending video of a possible short 3 to 4 foot extraterrestrial gray being that was filmed at a home security camera reportedly captured.
This security footage captured the homeowner's dog looking suspiciously out over their yard. The dog begins to bark as something spooks him. Suddenly, a strange set of disembodied legs runs across the background. The dog appears to be surprised by the sighting and heads inside. Looking more closely, the legs appear small and run at speed. This security footage captured the homeowner's dog looking suspicious.
Hello, everybody. And once again, I have the marvelous and fantastic Linda Eastburn with me. She's come out with a new book called Threshold to Encounters. Linda, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Thanks for playing along with me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So you got, I mean, my gosh, you're making all of us look pathetic in the Bigfoot community. All this stuff you interviewed, you just got through telling me, in the past year and a half, 350 some people, or something like that, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of work. And then on top of that, you wrote was a 262-page book.
I did, plus I made a film.
Plus, okay. What else did you do? I mean, how many houses did you sell on top of it? How many? So, yeah, it's interesting here. How's it going? Hey, MT Paranormal Life is in the house. Mike, heard, is that true, Mike, that Linda just interviewed you? And hey, there's another interesting fellow you might want to interview, and that's Dogman TP Hunting. He's over there in the motherland in Great Britain, in Essex, or Sussex, Essex. And let's see. Okay, all right. Let's give this up. So we got this book here, and it's Encounters. It may not be what you think. And it says here, I think this was back. Is this in the back of the book? Right here?
Yeah, that particular statement is not in the back of the book. The back of the book is a little bit more plain than that, but that was our original intent to put in the back of the book, and it does describe the book thoroughly. Is
that true? Did you tell me that MT Paranormal Life Mike outshined me?
I'm pretty sure I didn't say that.
You're the best. She said I was the best one yet. So it says it was many experience encounters, but few know why.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Hold on a second. I got to do something here. Just be a little patience with me. I should have thought about this, but I wasn't thinking about it. Let me try this once again. Oh, do I even have it? Oh, I can't do it. No, I didn't do it. No, don't tell me I did it. Okay, here we go. Many people, experience encounters, but few know why. This book takes you down many paths to understand the complexity of what really might be happening. Bigfoot, aliens, and ghost connection, illusions, time, missing time, EMF versus paranormal, and why you have not been what you have not been told. Mind speak, telepathy, and telekinesis. Secret societies. Oh, I had missed that. And projected reality. You really cover the bases there. I like that.
Yeah, and all of that comes from past research that I've done in the UFO field, abduction field, ghost paranormal experiences, and then most recently Bigfoot.
It's amazing. And you know what? You tied it all together. But you've been doing this for a while. How long have you actually been doing this? Starting with I guess it'd be the UFOs or aliens. So you started with, or
It's been over 30 years that I've been in the field of research. It's been a long time. I started with, I used to be a hypnotist. Well, I still am, I guess, but I don't do it, professionally anymore. But I worked with a lot of contactees and abductees in the UFO field. And that sort of pulled me into the UFO research. And that was a long time ago, about 30 years ago. That kind of got me started down this road, and I just kept going. And also I worked a lot with understanding psychic powers, psychic ability. And so that kind of also gave me another venue of understanding this. I think that what this book really brings to the forefront is so many different ways of viewing the subject. Because I've done it from so many different angles. It's not just the UFO community, not just the Bigfoot angle, not just ghost hunting. I've done it from the inner levels of the person's mind through hypnosis, and then also taking it all the way out to boots on the ground when we made byways of Bigfoot in looking for evidence of Bigfoot.
Yeah. Did you find any?
We did. Surprisingly, we found a lot more than I thought we might. It was an area that only vocals had been heard, but since we made the film, literally since we made the film, several pieces of evidence of sightings in the area on 2 different farms, going back as far as the 70s, where people saw Bigfoot in that area. And then another one along the river that we were filming, some other people that saw Bigfoot along that river at a time. Those were pieces of evidence that had never been reported. No one was talking about it. It's only after I made the film that oh yeah, I remember now. There were these monkey looking little hairy guys running around my place. Everyone thought something escaped from the zoo, but it wasn't. That was the situation in the 70s, just a short distance from where we filmed. 2 farms had seen Bigfoot on their farm, probably young juveniles because they weren't large.
Maybe. Or, there's people are filming things that look very hairy. Does it have to be a Bigfoot?
Doesn't have to be a Bigfoot. I mean, it's just it looked like a Bigfoot when they described it. So,
right. I mean, we were talking about that earlier prior to the show, that I think one of the problems that the Bigfoot community, all the researchers, everyone's we're willfully putting ourselves in boxes, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm.
And so if it's a hairy looking, humanoid looking thing, it has to be a Bigfoot. But does it have to be a Bigfoot? I guess I'll ask you the question.
Yeah. The thing is that they never thought of the term Bigfoot even. They thought this was some creature that escaped from a zoo or something. And everyone in the community was actually thinking in terms of, well, let's keep an eye out for maybe some creature that's, gotten out of the zoo. And then another farm saw the same thing. And they described it as semi-human monkey looking. It wasn't huge. It was very hairy. It walked, on 2 feet, and it describes everything that I hear people say, Bigfoot is. But there again, who knows exactly what it was, but it's close enough for me to probably call it a Bigfoot. it described that. And in an area where we found evidence, and also another area where some other people had also seen Bigfoot along the river. So I don't know for sure. I mean, I think sometimes also these things are interchangeable. Sometimes they can look one way one time and another way another time.
Interesting. Tell us more about that. What do you mean by that? So let's take the example. Okay, somebody sees a Bigfoot and it looks like a Bigfoot one time, and then what would it change the next time? What have you heard, or what do you think?
I haven't actually seen a Bigfoot, so I really don't have personal experience to go on. I just base that on what other people have talked about, the kind of the shape shifting of some of these creatures. Probably Dogman more than Bigfoot even, but I did hear of several times that they're seeing this Bigfoot, and then it's like in transition somehow it moves into looking like a human being. Now that isn't the same thing as people seeing a Bigfoot, and it just looks so human-like that they didn't feel like that they could in any way harm it because it seemed like another human being. But this is actually a transitional thing, kind of like a shape-shifting thing right in front of their eyes, where it turns into more human characteristics.
I like that. I really do like that, and it makes a lot of sense. So this kind of shape-shifting thing, some people might even call it like a skinwalker type thing or something. There are all sorts of labels for it, right? But this, so how about like aliens? Have you heard anything like that? As far as something that looked like an alien that shape-shifted as well?
I haven't heard any alien shape-shifting stories specifically. Now, I have heard of kind of screen memory more with aliens, where they have a memory, but it turns into more of a memory of like a deer or an owl or something like that. And then through regression, mostly they recognize that, oh, this wasn't a deer or an owl. It was actually like an alien.
That's so interesting. A deer or an owl. I wonder if they looked anything like this. Can I show you my background here? If you can see it, it's blown up here. In a tree, I filmed in 2022. It has big black eyes, and it has his nose and mouth. Now there's a little itty bitty one right here too. You can see how small it is. The leaves. You can see the black eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually see the nose and all that, and that's like the head. It's even got some of these paws or fingers. You can even see like almost like fingernails.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I filmed that. When was that? That was 2022. And I bring that up is because you brought up the whole idea from alien to an owl looking thing, and like what if you've heard about your connections with the trees?
Well, with aliens, I haven't really connected aliens with anything that seems to be nature related. They're always with, the craft, or just show up in someone's bedroom in the middle of the night. Certainly with Bigfoot, that seems to be almost an extension of the spirit of the forest, where they kind of move out of the trees and then move back into the trees and almost like become or look like they are part of the community of trees around them. Not necessarily even just in a hiding position, but maybe even just actually becoming part of the forest again. That kind of goes back to a lot of folklore, a lot of the Irish folklore, where where things, the spirit of the forest or the spirit of nature, where all of these elements had spirits, and they could become like alive and independent, where we could see them. And lots of times I think Bigfoot might be part of that folklore.
Well, I mean, if you put it on a scale, let's put it this way, from your research so far, you've interviewed 350 plus men and women, and primarily Bigfoot, right? The Bigfoot footery, as I call it. Okay, I know a lot of people are insistent that what they saw was flesh and blood thing, but they didn't touch it. Or do you know anybody that actually touched the thing that or claims they touched it?
Well, a few people believe that Bigfoot has been close enough to touch. I don't really right offhand remember anyone specifically describing touching Bigfoot or Bigfoot touching them, but certainly very close parameters within that. So no, I can't say that I recognize that as being a part of the stories I've heard.
So I mean, like my first encounter with the Crow Indian medicine man, it got like 15 feet in front of our grill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sure, we could have tried to touch it, but I mean, that was the last thing I was thinking, just giving it a handshake. But I just want to know because when I look, reflect on what I saw, you got like in your book, the cover, you have like the shadowy looking entity, like a Bigfoot.
Yes.
Let's think of it like jet black, like that, but then shimmering with electricity going through it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I experienced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people talk about the electrical elements when they see Bigfoot, sparks flying from them, different color hues around them, just sudden flash and they're gone, like as if they just poof, went back into some kind of electrical something. So and I think we have to also look at if we're seeing them in that kind of manner, then perhaps they are not necessarily totally flesh and blood, certainly not like we are flesh and blood, because I don't know any of us that can poof suddenly become a flash of light and be gone. I haven't heard of it doing
Right.
that. So the flesh and blood part might be very real, and I think there is an element of flesh and blood to them. But these other things that people are experiencing certainly are not. They do not fit into a flesh and blood category.
So let's go back to the scale of this. That being, what's the weight of evidence so far from what you experienced that flesh and blood on one side, or that we're dealing with something ultra terrestrial, something is beyond flesh and blood? The scale from what your evidence is, where is it at? Is it even? Is it balanced? Or is there one weight heavier than the other? Where's the weight of evidence leading for you?
When I first started, all of the interviews I was doing was pretty much just flesh and blood interviews. That was all there was. So, that's what the category I put it in, because that's what I was hearing. And I really didn't know anything about Bigfoot. I mean, it was just a foreign subject to me. But as time went on, slowly, people would start talking about various bits and pieces of unusual behavior, like flashes of light, and they would suddenly disappear. And so I had to start giving that some consideration. But I started asking, if they had seen orbs around the craft or anything of that nature around them, or any kind of unusual, battery drains or that sort of thing. And I was getting a little bit more of that. And now I just flat out ask all of the paranormal questions I can. And what I find is if I ask the question, they usually have had some form of that type of experience associated with Bigfoot. Now, in the beginning, I didn't ask those questions. So they may have, but they certainly didn't address it with me. And then some of them, when I ask, they say, no, they've never experienced that. So I would say in the 350 interviews that I've done, and not all of those are on Bigfoot, by the way, but even if we say 300 of them are on Bigfoot, I would say somewhere around 75% of them have had something, if not a flash of light and they disappear, which oftentimes they don't even see a Bigfoot, but they may hear a Bigfoot or have evidence of Bigfoot. But what they do have are orbs in the area, certainly orbs that seem to act intelligently, sometimes rods of light, sometimes lights that, coming from a distance and swoop into the area, almost like a UFO. So they may have other really unusual and interesting experiences, but not necessarily tie them directly with Bigfoot. So and my book addresses this. Sometimes we have to take the experience and move it back to also recognizing the person that is experiencing this contributes to whatever it is that they're experiencing. So if they can see a Bigfoot, they might also be able to see a craft or an alien or a ghost or have paranormal experiences often around them. Myself, I don't have a huge number of things like that happening. So I think the odds of my seeing a ghost, even though I've had one ghost experience, but I didn't see it, I felt it, But the odds of me probably seeing an alien, a craft, a Bigfoot are probably more slim than some people who are out in the woods a lot, or are people that just have those experiences on a regular basis.
Oh, that's interesting that you say that it's slim for you. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I've
mean,
tried really hard. So,
you tried real hard to have that happen?
I've taken people on major UFO research trips, all over the country and even to Puerto Rico. So, yeah, I think that it's difficult for me personally because I just don't have that in my makeup of experiences that I will probably have myself. But I certainly have been around it a lot, done a lot of research trips, and interviewed tons of people regarding that subject, but it just hasn't been normal for me. I saw one orange light above an area where animal mutilations took place. I did see that.
Right, right. Well, it's not the normal for any of us to have the encounter or the sighting anyway. So even those, and I find it interesting because you're not alone. I mean, there's many a person
Mm.
that I've talked to or you've been around, have been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years, never seen or a Bigfoot, or they might have, like you said, see some lights or saw something they thought it was a UFO, whatever kind of stuff. But it's nothing persuasive, nothing that there was really that they would feel that fit the mold. But I think part of the problem is the fit in the mold part and staying in the box. And I think a lot of I see in researchers is that they're afraid to go outside the box. And this it's across the board. It's in all walks of life. It's like this, right? Those who you look outside the box are going to be shunned by the group because it does. The group has said this is how it has to be, even though they cannot substantiate that it has to be. If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's the parameters. This is what a Bigfoot has to be, and that's it. And the guy with his degrees said so, and that's it. So, and but the problem is, I think that I think our own prejudice and biases and our own narrow-minded thinking limits our experience. So that's
Yeah,
what I
and
think.
our own perception ability is so limited. We don't always know everything that we're viewing or that we're experiencing. So I think it would be very easy to, and I'm not saying we're mistaking what we're seeing, but we may not be able to identify all the elements regarding what we're perceiving.
Especially if we're, at the end of the day, if it's if the creation, if there was like, let's say there's like this force, this nebulous force that's connected to the creation, let's say, or the patch of woods or trees, that's not always there, but can move from place to place, and just say it's like a blob of plasma or some kind of energy field, and that it can then, at its whim, at its will, and when I say it, I'm not saying it's a he or him or her or whatever, but can then have something manifest. It can create the manifest. It's doing the job. If that
Yep.
makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And that brings me to an experiment I did way back in I guess it was the 90s. I'd heard about some UFO craft being photographed in the 90s, and I was also, working on some various other skills. And so I got a group together, and they didn't know it, but we meditated on this image. And then eventually we met up and we projected that image into the sky. They didn't really know what my experiment was. And I just took snapshot after snapshot. Now, this was before cell phones and all that, that type of digital photography was real available to me. So I just took a simple little camera, took probably 50 photos. And in the majority of those photos, this form was in a cloud that was definitely just a different color, and it even had a line through the middle area of it, and it was very distinct. But did we create that? I mean, it certainly looked like we might have had some input on creating that. So that's why I'm saying you can't take the person out of the creation of whatever happens, even though we may not be intentionally trying to create these encounters. I don't know that we can totally take ourselves out of it. So if we can't take ourselves out of it, we certainly can't take out the possibility that these things can manifest and become part of our reality at will. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it seems to me though, for at least, as anecdotal, that's the problem. But from my experience,
Mhm.
Mike says here, co-create the experience, like Linda says, and I feel is right on. I think that there's something to that, and I think, but it's not a guarantee. It's not 100%. It's hit and miss at times, and I think it's like it's one of those things that we contribute to it, but we're not. We don't have the final say in this.
Yeah, I think it's a co-creation. I don't think that any of it's just like a singular, that happened to me or I made that happen. I think also, just working on various kind of meditation skills and just kind of cooperating with the universe. Timing has to be right. There have to be the elements available, for something to happen. So I think that sometimes we can be attempting to make something happen, and there just isn't any other cooperating forces in the universe for that to happen. But then there are other times when it just seems like you kind of get in this flow and everything just kind of falls into place.
Flow is a very important thing. I noticed for me, which I haven't been doing it, I have not been doing it this year, but in a very dark space, as I told you earlier. I mean, I have been focusing on, Bigfoot or tree spirits or whatever that we're dealing with, or forest spirits, because of my focus on what's going on in Gaza and that kind of stuff, and
Mhm.
drone warfare, which is a very disturbing thing to think about. But talk about secret societies and that thing. But I did notice and it's like an individual thing. It can't do it. It's not like a group thing. You can't, and you can't fake it. But when I would like really work on it and really show a lot of, it's like real positive vibes, really gratitude, talking to the creator, to the spirits, and not demanding anything, just showing gratitude and
Mhm.
recognizing that which is around. I was able to start having experiences or filming things. And I noticed that when I am, if for lack of a better way of saying it, spiritually numb or dead, kind of stuck in the, this density, the negativity, in the flesh type of thing. Then it's like I notice I don't film things. I don't just have the encounters, and through time, I just like I can recognize when I'm forcing it and when I'm not. And I think that whatever's around me recognizes when I'm being legit and when I'm just trying to mess with them or try to manipulate them to get something that I want. Because one of the things I notice is that with the positive vibe type of thing, and I'm not talking like a new age thing. It's like one of those. It's just like one of those things, and you can't. It's not like a performance. You can't do it. You have to. It's an eternal job, but if you're like, say your mind, instead of like for me, if I instead of focusing what's on the internet and all the terrible images of what's going on in Gaza and all that, if I just focus, I don't focus on anything else but them.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
But
Right.
them, and it's that with time, and there's no guarantee in the time thing. It could take an hour, it could take a week or a month, whatever, but things will start manifesting. It's like that the thoughts and the positive thoughts, um, things manifest. And then you have to deal with expectations and open up your mind and realize, at least for me, is that like we have the image of the Bigfoot in your book and the alien and then the ghost in the back, but I discovered if you're willing to look accept the fact that there are more things, an ecology and a spiritual ecology that many people talk about. Some very large name people right now in the field talk about, but I discovered on my own, that from my own experience and filming all that there's actually an ecology. There's multiple, at least they present themselves to be multiple different things. And I don't know if it's something that has to do with having an artistic eye too. Do you think they might have something to do with that?
Well, it might be more open to seeing more things, within it. But I agree with you, and in the book I talk about that. It's not just those three, even though those are the well-known ones that I put on the front of the book. But but they're the little people. They're they're the fairies and the trolls, and they're just so many varieties of entities and beings that people have experienced over time.
And I think you can feel. Well, I know I can feel it. If a moron like I can do it, I think anybody can do it. But you have to. It was easier, I think, for me to do it because I was doing it on my own, and so I didn't have to have the person next to me. I didn't have to worry about satisfying their expectations, if that makes sense. Or I do believe that the energy, the thought, our thoughts create certain. Well, Bob Monroe talks about the LOOSH, and but there's this different type of energy, and so if negative thoughts produce some type of energy, more positive thoughts. Also, and if the person next to you have no control over what they're thinking, they don't have no control over what you're thinking, and we feed off each other. You and I right now are feeding off each other, right?
Right, exactly.
And it's like for me, I have to stay. I have to consciously stay stable, if you will, level. You know what I mean? In order to have a positive reaction with other people around me, and then I know that person doesn't have. There's no requirement for them to do that. They can just get unhinged about something or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of like if you're walking out in the woods and your buddy next to me is thinking about nothing about women or party or bills or whatever it be, the divorce or whatever. It just we draw off each other.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, and I think all of the energy around us, and of course, it's all just vibration anyway. We put it into form in our mind, but it doesn't transform into form until our mind, interprets it. So no matter what that vibration is out there, whether it be a table, a chair, a sound, it's only in our mind that it transfers into something that is an actual thing to us. So I think that sometimes these vibrations can be more fluid than other times, and maybe that world that you're talking about is a more fluid kind of vibration that can take many different forms inside of our own minds if we are able to recognize the vibration.
Right, and then there's also the expectation. So if the images have been planted in our heads through drawings, paintings, what other people say, will say, like Mike, not Mike, Jack, cameraman's I'm gonna be interviewing him Sunday, and we talk about portals that the MT Paranormal Life, Mike, those guys filmed, right? And I was talking to him. We're going to talk more about that. There's this, what I discovered, that portals themselves come in different shapes and sizes.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just assume that it's just going to be this round circle thing or this opening or whatever, whether it's from, Hollywood or what the books other people say, or the assumption, because, I know people have had, I've filmed it. I've seen portals, I believe to be portals, right? But they never are like the same. And then I look at other people, and once I open up so in other words, a portal can look like a round circle. It could be a sphere, or it could be have like a multiple tentacles in it, or maybe it could be almost like a spidery looking thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
and there again, I think most portals we wouldn't even possibly see. I know on a UFO research trip, there was a group of people that was experiencing, this was out of the country, and they were having a lot of entity contact in their home. And a group of us were there, and we were going through measuring electromagnetic fields in the house. And in a completely different room from where we were interviewing this woman, someone picked up on a really, really strong electromagnetic field in the floor. And later on, as we went through the house, and she was describing where these entities would enter, and was right there where that magnetic field was. Now, there was no visual thing there, but it was this high area of electromagnetic field where they could come and go. And without that, maybe there wouldn't have been as easy for them to enter or exit. Maybe that's the threshold.
now, do you think that with these EMFs, do you think are they themselves creating it, or is it the environment itself creating it?
Boy, I don't know what creates that necessarily. So I don't know. I don't know what makes the difference there.
I should have asked, what do you think makes it? I kind of
I don't
made
know.
the assumption that it could be
I
more.
don't know. That's a really good question, though. And, I think I would have to have more knowledge of what creates electromagnetic fields, what all possibilities could it be, because I think that's a good thing that needs to be researched. What would make that happen in that specific location? It was in the floor of the house. I mean, why would it center itself there?
I don't know. Is there's type of nails, the wood? Is there
Yeah.
something under the floor? There's is there some type of rock or stone formation under it? There's the water table, activities. Maybe something happened. Maybe it's under. In other words, I don't know. I'm just throwing.
Well, yeah, and this other area that I know there have been a lot of UFO sightings, as well as Bigfoot sightings, and some other kind of interesting things happened there. We filmed out there, not for the Bigfoot film that I made, but for another show, and it was near a lake. And this was before I was doing anything with Bigfoot, and there was this really loud knock sound, and I just made the comment, what was that? And somebody said, I think that was a wood knock. And at the time, I didn't realize how that was very much associated with Bigfoot, activity. But later on, then, I recognized that it was. And then I knew of a Bigfoot sighting that was near that lake. But also there was a donut-shaped UFO craft that had been seen over the lake several times, as well as other lights and kind of unusual phenomena there. But in that area, there's you're talking about the geology of an area. There's also a very kind of peak sort of, I wouldn't call it a mountain, but it's tall enough. It's a kind of a peak, kind of a dome, like that is able to maybe be some kind of an antenna of some sort. There's also what I know of as a big cave system near that lake. So there are many things that might play into that, possibly creating some form of a portal there. I'm not sure.
So, my experience, I think, I can't say it's always that way because it's not always that way, but it's my experience that trees themselves are a form of a portal.
Mm-hmm.
And just think about it, just the way it's, the root systems go deep into the ground. There's the trunk itself in the portal, the rings within rings within rings, the energy running through the trees. And then, if you talk about people who have out of body experiences, I don't know if we talked about this last time or not, about the popping sound when people have this out of body experiences. I'll describe how they and it sounds like, and then are we hearing that same thing happening when it comes to these trees? Because then we'll also talk about poltergeist experiences within the homes or build. Environments are different than in the woods, and there's still this popping sound. And my assumption, and this is just all it is that when they energetically manifest, they use whatever the trees, the energy of the trees, or even just the wood, the floorboard, whatever, that kind of stuff to travel through, if you will. They use that energies in it. A lot of people assume that, like, if you have your wooden dresser with all that, that, and I'm not talking about the the crap from IKEA. I'm talking about, wooden, there's something going on with that wood itself. In other words, it's like, the wood, the grain, whatever's in there, it's like viable, like channel or highway that they could use, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
I
that
think
doesn't, it should, I mean, it shouldn't really necessarily make sense, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's something, it's, although it's no longer, it's like in the woods, you'll see like trees, dead trees that are there in the ground, and, a tree trunk or whatever. Why is it that these things are so interested in dead trees, and, and, you know what I mean? They're using it for something, you know what I mean? There's some way they can use it to manipulate things, and it's caused it to open up the drawers and all that. Where I think that other types of material, there's less, like, for instance, like plastic. Have you ever heard of anybody hearing poltergeist or spirits or anything like that, manipulating like plastic drawers or you know what I'm saying? I have never heard of the
Yeah, I
plastic.
mean, certainly I've heard of electronics going on and off. That's kind of a poltergeist thing. That's not necessarily a natural element.
Well, the electronics have wires running through it, and they
Mhm.
have metals and all that. So it's, I don't know. I'm just throwing that stuff at you because I'm just trying to figure it all out. So, oh yeah, I want to bring this up here because Mike brought up something earlier. Trapper, Mike, they have a cameraman and his gang, and Mike's part of that, and Trapper's one of the guys. I don't know if you heard about him. They have this great program. You know what they're doing, right? Those guys. Like Mike is the MT Paranormal. He's like the paranormal investigator, part of this group of guys that go out in the woods and the field and do Bigfoot research, right? And then he's got Trappers, the Trapper guy. He's what he does. You know what I mean? And everyone has their certain talent. But Trapper, he says this: Trapper got put into a trance one time and was talking to what he said was a Bigfoot. Was that in the woods, Mike? Can you just say yes or no? Was that in the woods? And then as it was talking about missing time EMS, what have you heard about people being put into a trance and being led or communicating to said Bigfoot? What have you heard about that?
I don't know that I've heard that referred to so much as a trance. That's more, I hear that a lot in the UFO field, though, when they have contact with aliens, they feel like they enter a trance state, sort of. But it wouldn't surprise me with Bigfoot, too. People do have missing time with Bigfoot experiences sometimes. They'll be in the woods and, they've had this encounter and it's been kind of a little bit disturbing to them, and they're making their way back, and it should be like a 5-minute walk back, and they somehow they're wandering around and they keep going by the same things over and over again, and they just can't seem to make it back. And then they realize they've spent hours and hours and hours in the woods, and with what should been a 5-minute trip back. And other times that the people who have Bigfoot encounters sometimes just have missing time. They'll be driving somewhere and they have like 2 hours of missing time when what should have taken a short time took forever. Now with the UFO community, you have a lot of that missing time as well. So either it's something about the person that just naturally has this missing time experience, or it's something about the phenomena itself that also causes this missing time.
Yeah, maybe the
And
phenomenon.
that's one of the things, with the hypnosis, we would go back and see if we can recreate that missing time element to see what actually has occurred.
I wonder if the phenomena cells can actually manipulate the biochemistry and what's going on within our bodies to do that too. So, Mike, let's see, wait a minute. First of all, Mike says, after reading Linda's book, it made me want to go to Missouri and see what is going on. Laugh out loud.
Well, yeah, there's an area that I'm researching right now that a lot of those stories in the book came from this area, but I call it Case 841 because there are also a lot of things in that area that I haven't put in the book. But I'll be coming out hopefully with another book that will just be Case 841. It's ongoing. It's an ongoing investigation, but it includes everything we're talking about in a really small, it's about a 10-mile radius where all of these things happen. There have been UFO craft seen, lots of Bigfoot sightings, lots of light phenomena. There's a haunted wooded area as well. There's just massive things happening in this one little spot. And well, it's not a small spot, I guess. Your 10-mile radius is a fairly good span, but still, it's a lot of things happening. And these are stories that most people haven't heard of. These are stories that people have not come forth and told. They haven't been public with these encounters. So this is all kind of new material. I'll be talking about it at the X conference that I'm speaking at in October here in Springfield, Missouri. But then I'm also hopefully going to be able to put all of that down so it can be condensed into just one piece, one book on just that area. It's a lot like Skinwalker Ranch when you look at it. I mean, there's lots of the same elements are happening there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like from my area, all my encounters are within a mile where I'm sitting right now. Mm-hmm. So, but at the same token, there's a whole bunch of people living around me, and I never heard any of them having the same experiences. So why am I having the experience, and why is the neighbor not having the experience? Does that make sense? You know what I mean? We're both the same location.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot like this one lady who had UFO alien encounters. She was at her neighbor's house one day. She was walking back to her house just across this large lawn area, just a simple, beautiful lawn with some trees. And she just kind of crossed over into this, just almost like she walked through a wall. And suddenly there was a craft on the ground and aliens walking around the yard. And she is in a completely different state of mind. That's kind of like a trance state almost, where she sees them and she's aware of them and she's just completely calm, like everything is normal. And so she watches this for a time and then suddenly it clicks off. They're not there anymore. And suddenly she's back to her normal self, which is hysterical because she's just seen a bunch of aliens and craft in the yard and she doesn't know what to do about it. So she goes on home, but it's almost like we don't even understand exactly if we are crossing some kind of a line or, we move through some field and suddenly, there's something there. And that could be what's happening with Bigfoot. It could be what's happening, in the ghost, the paranormal, any kind of entities we're seeing. There could be an actual location. It could be a space thing where we're moving into it. It could be a time thing. We're just, going down in some kind of a time warp. Or it could be, just simply that our mind just simply goes there. I don't know for sure what all this is, but there's evidence, there's also physical evidence. So it's not just a mental thing.
Right. I agree with that. It says here, first of all, hello, Linda. I really enjoyed your interview with Margie K.
Yeah.
I could listen to you and her talk for hours. Very good interview. That's awesome. And then I was going to keep up with this stuff. I might as well. They're putting the energy to ask the questions. Hi, folks. They can make you forget what happened also.
Yeah. Heard a lot of that with the alien contact, not as much with the Bigfoot. I just haven't, but I haven't really worked with people hypnotically with the Bigfoot experiences the way that I have with the people who've had the alien contact and abduction experiences. I've done a lot of those regressions with them and done detailed conversations at length with the people in the UFO community. With Bigfoot, it's mostly just the interviews that I have. I don't have as many in-person interviews. I interviewed Ron Moorhead in person. He certainly had some interesting experiences with, craft and lights and orbs and sounds and strange phenomena happening up at the Sierra Camp. So his was one of the interviews that kind of took me down that line. This doesn't sound like just like a lion or a tiger or a bear or something, just a critter that that is out there. This sounds like a very different sort of phenomena.
Right. So just lost. So like with Ron Moorhead with the lights and all that. And did he actually simultaneously see the Bigfoot and the lights, or in different
No,
occasions?
he never even saw the Bigfoot at the same time they were recording the Sierra sounds. He didn't actually see Bigfoot. So he's never really said 100% that that is Bigfoot because he didn't see it. But he did see a Bigfoot up there. And I think his daughter saw a Bigfoot up there in that Sierra Sounds area as well. They've kind of concluded it has to be something. So they think that's probably Bigfoot, but I don't think they've ever specifically said it is.
Well, because I find that it's interesting that you bring that up because what it's human nature, I guess. I don't know the reason why it, or just the fact that people don't ask the questions or the right questions. If Ron is saying that he can't 100% say that the sound is actually Bigfoot, then why does everyone else make that assumption?
I think they did see Bigfoot up there, and I think that's where it came from. And then other people have heard that same sound around the country that has Bigfoot activity there too. So it's kind of by deduction. It's been long enough now, and enough kind of information's come through that they are, should we say, 90% sure, 95% sure it's probably a Bigfoot making the sound. But if you don't actually see what's talking to you, what's making that noise, who knows? And another thing, you talk about people boxing things in, and I think we do. One of the reasons I wrote the book about all three of these areas, along with other cryptids and other unexplained things, is because I think we do kind of get in this mindset that it has to be a certain way. Someone was telling me once that they were out doing Bigfoot research. They'd seen Bigfoot in an area, and they saw a Native American on a horse, moving along, and then suddenly it just disappeared. And in their mind, they immediately put this into a ghost bracket, category, whatever. And my thought was, well, why wouldn't they, if a Bigfoot's walking along and then suddenly poof disappears, why isn't that also put into a ghost? Couldn't that possibly be a remnant of an energy of a Bigfoot or something from the past that just suddenly disappears? We don't think of it as maybe the same thing, or maybe the Native American on the horse wasn't a ghost either. Who knows? It may be a time warp thing.
Or projection, Prometheus. Mike has a question here for you. Question for Linda. Do you think near-death experiences are a glimpse into the afterlife or spirit realm?
Certainly seems so. I've worked with a lot of people or taken a lot of stories about near-death experiences, and they certainly go someplace, have communication, decide if they're going to stay or go, or sometimes they're told they just have to come back. But I definitely think they're in a place that is, it is for certain not where we live normally. And, I think it might not be a total crossing over because they're not, maybe 110% dead, but they're close enough that they have that experience as to what people perhaps experience. And I hope so. Most of those experiences are really very, positive in the long run. They're really given an opportunity to see, kind of and evaluate what they're going to do from that point.
There's so many variables. So I don't know if you've seen the video, or there's a couple out there. There's at least two that I know of right offhand. Like the one is a fight where some guy's attacked, and this rather large, shadowy looking being pops out of him that's the size of a Bigfoot. And there's another guy who ends up being hit by lightning. At least it looks like. They say it's lightning, but I don't know about if it's really lightning or it's just like some kind of static discharge that happened to him. He was drunk, and a large shadowy looking being that looked like Bigfoot popped out of him. I'm not making it up. Popped out of him.
No, I understand that. I think that very well may be true. But, I have a reptilian story that's very similar to that. Within, about a week span of time, but talking about these things that may be within us, that things can kind of come out from that. But there was, within about a week's period of time, there was a woman I knew who was a nurse, and she was treating a patient alone in a room, and suddenly she sees this patient patient as this reptilian creature, and it just startled her. It actually shocked her, kind of pushed her back against the wall a little bit because she was so startled. And she went out of the room and then eventually went back in the room, and the woman seemed normal. Then another nurse, almost the same thing happened to her. It was a different patient, of course, a completely different hospital that she was working in. Same thing happened. This had never happened before, but suddenly this woman that she was working with turned into this reptilian looking creature, and she immediately went out in the hall. The doctor saw her and she couldn't say, well, there's a reptile in there. So, but she went back in and worked with her. And then in another case, there was a woman I knew who was open to UFO research and such. And she had a family, and her daughter was around 13, 14. And her daughter kept telling her the man bot that lived in the house behind them, she would see him outside. And she said, Mom, I'm telling you, this guy, turns into a reptilian when I see him. And then this one was a UFO researcher. So a woman came to her house that was there for some UFO things that she was going to report and tell her about. And she started telling her about this doctor she went to, that while he was examining her, she saw him turn into a reptilian. I mean, it was just absolutely shocking to her. And that same man, that doctor, was the one that lived behind this lady's house that her 13-year-old daughter was seen turn into a reptilian. So I'm thinking, what is this within us that somehow is that shape shifting? I don't think the two patients, the nurse's patients, nor the doctor knew that these people were seeing them as a reptile. But what makes that happen? Why are we seeing that? Why are people seeing that? And the bigger question is, why did 3 people come to me in the course of a week and tell me these stories? I don't know. But
Synchronicity.
Yeah.
Synchronicity. Right? It's amazing how it works.
It wouldn't surprise me that, Bigfoot could come appear as well, possibly.
Well, so those who are what I believe are contaminated by the Abrahamic faith will think they're all demons and negative. But then other people, the Gnostics and others, talk about daemons, accompanying spirits that are always with us. We never see them. We might get a glimpse here and there. And so the question that I'm starting to have is that first of all, we make the assumption because the avatar that we're in, that and the other side or in the ethereal plane or whatever it may be, that we're all going to look like what we look like in the meat suit that we're in. That's the first thing. This is assumption, right?
Right.
Thanks to like Roman Catholics and that kind of stuff. They kind of convinced that this. And then there's just a natural assumption that we would have anyways, right? Based on our own references. But we might all, I am under the impression, but of course it's like everything, we're not in a position yet to prove it, that our spirits don't all look the same.
Yeah, I would agree.
So my spirit might be, I don't know, it might look like a 20-foot tall sloth or something. I don't know, slothy looking thing, or it might be a wolf, or it might be whatever. These labels, these placeholders we put on it, then or it might look like an alien, or maybe our true essence. Once we leave the body, we can do this shape shifting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because we don't know what we'll look like, when we're not using this body and fully enmeshed with this physical world that we believe is our reality, at least for this time. And who knows? And who knows what else is out there, and who knows what lurks within our own interactive spirit that we certainly possess.
Yeah, and a lot of people have difficulty with the uncertainty, and this is how this creation is. So there's a whole bunch of uncertainty. Dog man TP hunting. Phil, question for Linda: if you're still there, Phil, does our mind live in our brain, or is our mind external to us?
Yeah, I think our body and our brain is an interface with the physical world only. I think our spirit is not contained just within our physical system.
And my hunch is too. So when it comes to the brain is like a reduction valve. It's like it's like the organ that captures our essence and keeps us from really being our full self or ability. And if that makes any sense, there's the brain is called is a, it's a limit. It's a limitation device, is what I believe it is. It only allows you to have, X amount of ability, and it keeps us from. I think it's part of what contributes from with the avatar suit to keep us from seeing what's all around us
Hmm.
in the ethereal realm, that the spirit realm, whatever you want to call it, these entities, these beings, these archons, whatever they may be. Maybe even our own personal daemons. For some reason, we're not allowed to see these things all the time.
Right. Yeah. I think that there are probably ways that you can go deeper within your own consciousness, not necessarily tied to the body, and be able to be more aware of all of that.
So the question that I have too, of course, I don't know if anybody has the capacity to answer that question in this realm. Maybe you do, and that is, why? What's the big deal? You know what? If we come accustomed to the environments around us, right? And if these entities, these beings, as scary looking as they are to us, is because of our own ignorance and lack of orientation. If we were able to see these things all around us all the time, you would become accustomed to them. They wouldn't be the frightening, scary looking, monstery looking things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and many cultures do that. They don't have so much of an issue or problem with alien contact. I mean, it's just kind of like they walk among them, sort of. They can see these things, and it's not such a scary, frightening thing. So I think it's in our Western world that we become really preoccupied with materialistic things and are not real connected with our spirit. So we don't really have that interaction as much. So it becomes scary. Also, we've been conditioned to believe that these things are maybe horrific, evil, demonic, and so that becomes a really scary element as well. Less likely that you'll want to see them, that's for sure.
Sure. Then this goes to your book about secret societies, and is
Yeah.
there a possibilities with these secret societies that, because from my research, where there's in spiritualism, spiritualists, and you know, and if you're like me, I was heavily oriented with Christianity and that kind of stuff for a long time, and I actually I went through a deconstruction process myself. This just finally kind of was finalized this past for a year and a half, right? Still holding on and wanted to believe, but and if you still believe, and those that believe are not, saying you should or shouldn't. I'm just saying, for me, I saw that as time went on, so it was a trap. So the elites, the people that in their secret societies, they're like having communication with these things that we call spirits, and this seems to be a common thing. Um, some people claim that they worship them and do all sorts of rites and rituals, and I don't know, get possessed and all that nonsense. But and it could be the case at times, but I don't think it's always that way. But the thing is, those who want to be called the elites, the people that manage this LOOSH farm, the plantation, they seem to want us not to focus on this stuff.
Yeah, it does seem that way. And why, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of information that I don't hold unnecessarily. But I do think that that there are, and I think in my book I go into secret societies and maybe what might possibly be a projection system where it's mind to mind, kind of a mind control thing, and that was brought to me years ago when I was teaching hypnosis. And there was a man came into my class who had information regarding this, who had been part of a program similar to that, would not tell me the name of the society and would not give me a total information, but he was wanting to kind of get away from that and didn't know exactly how to do it, but they were still projecting to him. And he was able to see craft and aliens and newspaper headlines and prophetic things, and all kinds of things were happening that that he really didn't care for much. But he was in the upper levels of whatever this secret society was. He would not say what it was. He would not give me that information. He was very reluctant to even talk about it. And then right after that, he was still in the class. Right after that, he just disappears. His phone was disconnected. He had moved. I mean, it was just like within 2 days. So that was just a really weird moment, of information that just kind of fell into my lap a long time ago, but made me really think about it.
Right. I wonder if they draw him back in or out. I think. Well, no. So one of the things that I'm thinking is, so they have the secret societies in which they use the group once again in the group think, the mind hive, to manipulate each other instead of like in a more pure sense of trying to understand one's surrounding. It's just there's. At least for me, it's like it's no expectations, not trying to exploit these entities, these beings, these things that you're seeing behind me that I filmed in the woods. It's just accepting what is. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And learning to accept what is, and realize that I mean, you could. If one is selfish, greedy, and full of the vices that life is, you can say, I'll try to exploit these things and make me, powerful, allow things to happen. And apparently it does happen as far as riches and wealth. But from my experience with doing The Secret years ago was, the things I manifested, but they didn't tell me about the backside. They didn't tell me about the consequences of these things that I wanted to happen. The negative part of it, especially if you're not, how do I say this? Because it's not about being purity as much as it is just about one's motives once again and one's intention, right?
Right.
So when you say you're 40s or 30s, young, ambitious man that still has looks and that kind of stuff, and so it was materialistic, selfish, exploitative things that all the time I didn't think it was, having a pretty woman and that kind of stuff, the vision board, having the pretty woman, the house, the car, the job, the money, that kind of crap. That's what I mean. It was because I'm a guy, right? And women and men are for some reason were wired for good reasons. I wasn't thinking about roses and trees and plants and beautiful things. I was, you know what I'm saying? And so why was I doing it? It was for something for me to get something out of for my own selfish desires. And when I was more like just allowing things just to be and to say, I just want to know, just let me know more about why am I here? What's the real purpose? I guess coming to a humble state, teachable state, if it's even possible to be teachable, interacting with the other side. I mean, they did teach me. They taught me that there's things connected to the trees, and there's all sorts of different things. Well, what I mean, out there. I mean, what I do with it, that's the other thing. I don't think you really have. I think they create a situation that, I mean, you could, as they say, sell your soul to the devil. Figuratively speaking, you could sell your soul to the archonic forces, the entities around us, for, a piece of the pie, it's a sliver of the pie, but honestly, I don't know. To me, it's just like the bigger rat cage and the fancier, box on 4 wheels and all the other stuff is all very superficial. It's all part of the grand illusion, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And we need a certain amount of that for stability in our life. We need shelter, we need food, and relationships and things like that are all really important things. But I think if it's our only focus, then we're kind of missing the boat on some of the other parts of ourselves that also are here with us to possibly grow and learn. Who knows?
So, Dogman TP Hunting has a question for you. A question for Linda. Why have certain groups, for example, Bohemian Grove, have such close affiliations with certain biblical deities such as Lilith? Well, Lilith is not a biblical deity, but it is certainly part of the Jewish lore. It is, as far as the Talmud, actually, it'd be more connected to the Talmud than the Bible. But and I never heard of the people, the guys in the Bohemian Grove worshiping Lilith. They worship something else.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm familiar with that particular meeting that takes place, I think annually or something like that, where they go in and have these various
Northern
experiences.
California, baby. Where
Yeah,
you know.
and I mean, I really don't know an answer to that question. That's not I don't know any of the people that attend that, so I don't know much about it.
Was it the cremation of care? Is that what it is? The ritual and for the owl.
Hmm.
What is the owl? Is Moloch or is it the other? No, it's not. What is it? So, well, I know like guys like Alex Jones try to convince people it's Moloch, but I think it's something else. But regardless of that, I think it's what is there saying there? Grow North Node Juno. You know what they're saying there?
No.
Well, Gavin, can you translate for us there the code? Thanks. So, anyways, back to this because the secret societies seem to have something going on there, especially when you talk about shamans and you talk about because all shamanic societies all have their own secret societies, right? Did you look into that yourself?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I haven't really studied shamanic work so much, even though I know several shamans. But yeah, there's probably elements of their work that would be secret. I don't know if you call it secret societies or not, but more the ones that I have been more introduced to or talked with more are more the mainstream secret societies that we'd all probably heard about.
Right. So, like when it comes to indigenous cultures and all that, the shamanic, the element of the culture, they're separated from the tribe. Only a certain group is designated to know the secrets, and of course, there's multiple reasons for that. And one of the things, obviously, control of the tribe, right? You know what I mean? It's just what we witness today from the oligarchs and the plutocracy, the ruling elite and the rest of us, right? They held on to the secrets in their own way, right? Their own agendas, and they leave us out of the loop, right? They just exploit us, that kind of stuff. So is one of the consequences of secret societies. But also with the secret societies, it's like it can be just two people, or it could be a group of people with organized, with names and all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be anything that people want, and that's what it be.
True. There's power in numbers. There's power in just like minds and people coming together for whatever purpose they're wanting to manifest something or create something, I suppose.
So this is what Dogman TP Hunting is trying to get at. So when Lilith was the first lady to Adam, of course, yeah, this is part of this Jewish tradition, folklore, especially coming out of the Talmud, but was to become the mother of demons. The owl is the one incarnation often used to portray her. And also the owl is because the symbolism of being able to see in the dark, in dark places, to be able to see when no one else can see, that kind of stuff. So. But it's interesting, the owl. So since you're bringing it up, and there's Bigfoot and aliens and ghosts connection, and you brought it up earlier too. Owls. A lot of time we're hearing stories of people when they're having quote unquote encounters with Bigfoot or aliens. Owls are involved. What's have you heard? You heard any kind of
Well,
things?
owl, I think is, if you study anything about the spirit or the energy of various animals, birds, insects, etc., they all sort of have a certain energy about them, and owls certainly have one that kind of guides you through the dark or through death. Sometimes owls will represent death. Sometimes a transition. And I think that's why they've kind of been associated with wisdom too, is because of the kind of energy that an owl puts forth is, knowledge about how to maneuver things that we may be in the dark about.
And then, of course, there's that one movie. Remember that movie from the '70s? The one that was like a bad omen, the owls and all that. It's the question: why has owls featured so heavily in UFO lore? That's what he was getting at.
I don't know, but I think it has something to do with the eyes. I think because of the aliens having those big, huge black eyes, and people will sometimes be, it's a screen memory where they will have come upon a craft, aliens are there, and what they remember then, because it's completely blocked from their knowledge base for a time, they just remember seeing an owl in the road or in the woods. And they just go home with that idea that it was just an owl, and then bits and pieces of either memory will start coming forward, or there's evidence that something else happened, maybe markings on their skin, maybe something on their automobile. All kinds of physical evidence that's saying, wait a minute, this probably wasn't an owl that I just saw in the woods, or something won't make sense about it, like the owl was 8 feet tall, standing in the middle of the road or something like that, where it's not logical, it's not reasonable that their memory fits with the actual thing that happened. So for some reason, it may be the eyes. It may just be that owl is the energy that they recognize, as being this thing that's helping them to maneuver that particular incident that they don't have full memory of. But yeah, lots of people see owls. Lots of them see deer as well because of the shape of the deer's head and the lights in the eyes, kind of thing. It's like that they see that, they think that's what they've actually experienced, when in reality maybe it was something more.
Interesting. Or what about this too? What have you heard about as far as having these manifestations, whether it's a Bigfoot, alien, UFO, and animals, actual flesh and blood animals? Like in the beginning of the show, we saw a dog. Was it 2 dogs or 1 dog? I can't remember. Oh, there was a dog and a deer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And where this entities was associated with it, or in the vicinity, right? The one dog could see the disembodied legs running across the yard, and was distracted by it, right? And the odds, but then the question would be, would an actual human being be able to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Why do dogs be able to see that? And then deer as well. There's a lot of times deer. This one of the early days in finding these entities, these forest spirits. It was in images or photographs of like deer, mountain lion, bears in the woods. Because I noticed there was some kind of connection. Because here it's a sentient beings, a life force once again, and these beings seem to follow them. Have you heard anything of such from other people? From as far as
not a lot on that. Not really much on that part. No.
Now I know it sounds like I'm making it up, but I guess it's thinking outside the box. I guess that's what it comes down to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. So
I think that's true. I think we're going to have to think outside the box because, the reality that we think we know right now really isn't fitting with what these experiences are telling us. So, but I think in physics, if you study Donald Hoffman, he's a very high proponent of this particular new idea, that space-time isn't holding water anymore, even mathematically. So I think we're moving past that, but it'll be years and years and years before it becomes our reality that, that these new ideas, these new things actually do exist. And, I think once it's in our minds, we'll be able to actually perceive more, possibly, than we can right now, because we're sort of conditioned to believe that, reality is just like it is right now. So it's harder to see things beyond what you think you're going to see.
Yeah. Well, let's hope, because I mean, a lot of the sacred cows of the past century are falling apart before our eyes, thanks to the internet and people challenging all these sacred cows, was NASA or our understanding of what space is itself, or what this place is itself, to the fact that, I mean, 50 years ago to even talk about Bigfoot, hell, 20 years ago to even talk about Bigfoot, you would have been totally laughed at.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you about. These people on this farm, in the 70s, saw these things that they described them like a Bigfoot, but they wouldn't have called them that because they didn't even have the frame of mind to even put that term on them.
Phil here, Dogman TP Hunting, he talks about, once again, he's asking Mike, have you heard owls when out in the forest? I have quite often, M8. That word, anyways, what M8 stands for. But that's something that's quite often heard from people who have had these encounters in the evening. I mean, I've heard it from other shows, people claiming that they've had what Bigfoot. They claim that it's Bigfoot mimicking, doing a poor imitation of a bird or an owl or an animal, right? How often have you heard that from the people?
I have heard that, yeah, that there will be various sounds that Bigfoot gets the credit for, and I'm not sure exactly why they're saying that that's Bigfoot. Maybe it doesn't sound enough like an owl to be an owl. I don't know. I'm not sure, but Bigfoot gets a lot of things placed upon there.
He gets a lot of credit, doesn't he?
If it is true or not, I don't know.
He's like they're turning poor old Bigfoot into a demigod.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes.
Superhero.
Right.
Because that's one of my observation is too, is that Bigfoot is never alone. And when I say that, most people say, "Oh yeah, there's a clan. There's usually a bunch. There's see one big. There's not Bigfoot." And I'm like, then I have to explain that I'm saying they're never alone. There's like other entities that are along with it, different shapes and sizes and all that. That's my observation.
So. Yeah, I did a show called Bigfoot the Limits, and it was really early on, and it was an actual on-site documentary film that I made. And they had exactly what you're talking about. It wasn't just Bigfoot. There were several things happening at their place. What took it into the realm of Bigfoot was mostly in the snow twice. They had these huge, like 5 feet apart span of footprints going through the snow, and then some kind of a little youngin that was probably being drugged or carried, along beside them. And it was very clear twice, and they documented things extremely well. But then they also had a trail came up looking out into the wooded area, and there was this really, really odd creature that was just hanging, around the edge of the tree. Was not a Bigfoot. Don't know what it was, but it was not a Bigfoot. And then they had lots of vocals. Just tons of different vocals, and they recorded everything. A lot of strange things happened on their property, but it was a multitude of things. It wasn't, and the sounds didn't sound like the normal Bigfoot sounds. I'm not sure what they were. They tried every way in the world to figure out if another animal was maybe creating these sounds. They were never able to find anything that made this particular sound. But it was just a really interesting show. Get a chance to look at that Bigfoot the Limits, because it did encompass many different species of unknown cryptids.
Now, was this in the woods? Is it a wooded area? Was this plains? What was?
There was, yeah. They lived on a dead end road, and then behind that house,
Why is there always a dead end road or a
There's
cul-de-sac?
always a
What's
dead end road.
up with
It's
that?
scary. Dead end roads are scary. So, but there were houses around, but the properties were like 10-acre tracts or something like that. But it went in the back. It was very thick woods and went way down to a river down at the bottom of the woods. So yeah, there was a lot of territory there that would have been easy for something that didn't want to be known to be there. And a lot of other people in the area had seen Bigfoot as well. They actually had some sightings of Bigfoot in the area.
So my experience, and then talking to others, and just it seems that you have a greater opportunity. First of all, I think the forest here have a great opportunity to actually have a poltergeist experience. It has something to do with the forest, the trees itself. But if you have running water too, at close to these trees, that seems to up the ante of. And I know most people think, well, this is because it's a food source, or there's a place where they need water. But if you can accept the idea that we're dealing with something that's ultra terrestrial, something that is not necessary, it's feeding on something different than flesh and blood type of things, which is weird because there are times then that same thing, these things will then all of a sudden, for some strange reason, have the desire or need to carry off a deer or
Right.
a gut pile or whatever it may be, and you're just like, well, if it's coming in and out of reality, what's the need of that? And of course, we don't have the answer, but if it was simply a flesh and blood thing, it would make sense. But since we're not, from my opinion, and everyone that I've ever talked to that's been doing this for a while comes to similar conclusion. We're dealing with something that's not flesh and blood only.
Right. Yeah, something that probably still requires energy of whatever reason, and it's energy whether it be energy from a dead animal that they've killed, or whether it be energy on the other side. We don't know what they live off of, but when they're not in the physical form, I don't know. But I think the really difficult thing to understand is that something can be both, that it can be physical and then non-physical, and come back physical and then non-physical. But humans do that too. I mean, we're physical, and then we go through the death process, and we're no longer, in a physical form. Our spirit goes somewhere else. And if you believe in reincarnation, maybe it comes back into physical form. I don't know. But we don't have that ability to just move back and forth at will.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
I don't really have, and I thought about that so much. I did a lot of past life regressions when I was doing hypnosis. I think it kind of makes sense when you look at it in the natural world, because most things recycle. So it kind of makes sense that maybe we would, come back.
So I don't know if you've done any research on reincarnation, soul trap matrix. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not. No.
Well, that's where I end up being, which very few people actually know anything about. Literally, people know a lot about reincarnation for some reason, but they can't. What I've noticed observation with these near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, etc., is that there's this common theme in which reincarnation seems to be part of it. It's almost like, okay, you maybe heard about like the Gnostic principle of not going into the light after death. Mm-hmm. You've heard of that, right? I'm sure.
Yeah. Right. Yes. I've heard that.
And so a lot of people say go into the light. And this is a problem. It's a belief system. It's so dangerous to become, operating a belief system that you can't prove. But one of the things that's interesting is the possibility that, maybe the light is part of the deception that recycles us into, to whatever the true essence that we are, come back in here to go through another round of, which I don't believe, if there's don't see any evidence in karma. I don't see any evidence when it comes to reincarnation about learning, having new experiences, because we have a memory swipe. We have forced amnesia upon us, which means that, we don't remember the previous life. Mm-hmm. Any of the lessons we're supposed to learn in the first place.
I think probably the best evidence are the children. that have memory. Like after 9/11, there were so many kids that were born, shortly thereafter that remembered exactly who they were, where they were. This one was a fireman, and he remembered the numbers on his truck. And he knew all about 9/11, and it was just he had a complete set of memory. And oftentimes when the kids come back, and they come back really fast like that, they will have some memory. Those are probably the best evidence of reincarnation that I know of, and there are a lot of those out there that seem to hold water. So
yeah, and I was sort of saying, and then there's the body marks and all the kind of stuff.
yes,
Maybe it's in a battle or got shot or blah blah blah. And when you start compiling up those things, and we can't. I mean, what do you say when somebody has the memory of a previous life, or some from another part of the world that they should no reason to even remember it?
And there again, I think we have to move out of the box on that too, because we immediately think, well, if you have this memory, you had to have been the entity that had the memory. But, I work intuitively, and I kind of think that we deal more like with a universal database of all memories. So, you may just be connecting into somebody else's memory that had that experience, some past life that had, or a life that had that experience. It's like consciousness isn't so much centralized just within the person and their own individual experiences. It's a strange thing, but I just think we're all pretty much interconnected consciously.
Well, this is interesting. So, and this lets this whole thing about having these experiences, and people seeing different things. It's like there's things that even like aliens, for instance. So when you really start breaking it down, there's things that look alienish, like with big black eyes. But as I showed you earlier, there's things popping out of trees with big black eyes, and using somehow the life force of the trees to pop out. And I've heard that as well, that, there's legend or rumor out there that DNA has been done on aliens, in which is primary plant, and there's a big chunk of it's plant, but whatever. I want to try to get at that. What I'm trying to get at is, why was I bringing that up? Why was I bringing it up?
We were talking about reincarnation. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Reincarnation. So, well, let's go back to that. So, this reincarnation thing, this seems like there's a possibility of that within concepts of the soul trap matrix. The soul trap matrix part is that we get there's these entities like Bob Monroe talks about in his books, and with the second book, he talks about the production of the LOOSH and these archonic forces. He doesn't call them archons; he calls them something else. But it's the same idea. These higher beings, these ethereal, spiritual beings, whatever you want to call them, they feed upon our experiences, our emotions, our suffering, or pain, and that this is like we get tricked to come back here over and over again. Of course, in the day, we don't know if that's the case or not, but when you tie in the reincarnation thing, along with the fact that if we're supposed to be learning lessons, which seems to be a bogus argument. I mean, how many times you got to, 10,000 times to go through suffering and pain and be a jerk or, whatever it is, the lesson you're supposed to learn. I mean, the lesson learned part doesn't make any sense. And then karma, if karma is really legit, then how come we can talk about secret societies, and how come it's the worst of the worst are always at the very top of the pyramid, the food chain in humanity. You know what I mean? They end up being presidents, and we all know this, and there's no question about it. Anybody, if you've lived around here, for a half a century or more, you're just like, how is it? It's always the biggest jerk that ends up at the very top and having a grand old life, and it's the decent human being that ends up suffering ridiculous amounts. You know what I mean? And there's no evidence of any kind of karma ever manifesting. So, but it's something to think about. I mean, the biggest question, all this, Linda, that I've come to, the biggest concern that I have from doing all this stuff is the fact that there aren't definitive answers.
That's the thing, is like we can't really put our finger on anything. We can say, okay, yeah, this is what's going on. It's the ambiguity and the mystery. Now, I understand the mystery is probably why you and I have a show today. So, because
Yeah,
the mystery is driving, and everybody wants to hear the next little bit and piece of information that can say, Bigfoot is real or not real or whatever. So there's a lot of that, that's part of this. But yeah, I have to agree. And I don't know if we will have an answer. I think we have to really start thinking out of the box to get any kind of answers, and we'll probably only get small portions of it, and probably not even in my lifetime, maybe a little bit, but not much. But, things are moving and changing. We became a very materialistic world, and as long as we only see the materialistic part of the world, we may not have very many answers at all beyond this.
and it's just with the technology that we have today, from the internet to television to the radio to music, there's so many distractions to keep us from being present and being connected. It's like it's almost like, well, one of the things is, that's another question that I always think, when you look at the avatar that we live in, and people always say what amazing creation the human body is, and I'm like, how old are you? Yeah, it might seem like you're amazing when you're young and healthy and beautiful, handsome, and everything going for you. Your faculties are at prime. But I tell you what, this chronic pain and suffering, all the other things that go on, the 5,000 genetic flaws, and the disastrous spine. Just think about the spine itself. It was like the fact that we are, and it's not just cultural. It's not just because of. I mean, you know what? Even if, like, I don't know if you've seen this stuff, like with the gay parade, the pride parades, and all that kind of stuff, and those images. Have you seen any of this stuff for the past year, like in San Francisco and all that, and all these guys walking around with all butt naked with their, bunch of literal swinging dicks this time. You know what I mean? Not just figuratively. You know what I mean? You're like, human body is just really goofy. It's really, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It's like what designed us, and why are we here, and how come we're so? Is it simply through breeding? Did the human beings do it to themselves through generational, crossbreeding, or deliberately to breed us into being like slaves to each other's? I mean, the body, you look at the shadow of the Bigfoot on your cover, and it's all naturally hairy and adapted to the environment, but we are not. And I keep bringing it up because I find it, and people say, why do you care? What does it matter? I'm asking. Well, to me, it matters because it's like we stick out like a sore thumb, if we're honest about it. Whether God or not, whether you want to believe there's a God or not, or there's something other, or did we do it to ourselves or whatever, we do not fit in. And why? And it's an eternal question. It's also part of this creation, which I do believe it's also where these aliens and Sasquatch and spirits come into. It's all connected. It's like the old saying, some things or something is watching us. Question: coma victims flatline brainwaves right then. How can they wake up knowing their family came in to see them? Could we have a hive mind, hence memories of previous lives? I think you brought that up a little bit, and I think, what do you think? Want to expand upon that?
Well, yeah, I think that you can definitely move out of your body and be aware of things, in the room. I mean, that's a type of remote viewing. It's a type of being aware of something that you're physically, your five senses aren't what's aware of it. You're out of your body, looking at that or perceiving it. That's something I teach people to do, not necessarily lift out of the body, but to be able to be in a different time space, to be able to observe something or be able to be aware of something anyway. The hive mentality, I don't necessarily think we have a hive mentality so much. As in one mind, but I think, on a consciousness level, I think we are plugged into a larger piece of consciousness. If you think of a tree, since tree has kind of been the theme in this show, if you think of a leaf on a tree, it's plugged into the overall living system there, but it's not necessarily the total life force of the tree. You have the leaf will leave the tree at the end of the season, and a new leaf will grow back the next season. But the tree itself is the substance of the life force. It's got the roots and the trunk, and it's going to feed the source of everything else. So I think we are like leaves on the tree. There may be different leaves at different times that come and go, but we are connected to a consciousness that is more deeply rooted, like the trunk and the roots of the tree itself.
And we call this a consciousness, or some kind of essence, some kind of plasma, or whatever it is. It seems to be all connected, and when things are,
it does, and it holds records. It holds memory of everything that has ever existed, but it also goes into the future of things that are going to happen, or probabilities of things that are going to happen. So that's just how we get prophesying, and that's also how we are able to go back in time and see things as well. But consciousness is not just in the body. Consciousness, I think, exists external to our physical system. It's just that we think it exists within just the body, but it doesn't.
And the Akashic records and all that kind of stuff that the previous people talked about. And then, yeah, there just seems to be, I mean, it gets really wild, Linda, like, especially when you find there's just people out there that have captured multiple entities. You think of like paintings, like the Final Judgment that's in the Vatican wall, and they actually have found there's literally I can't think of the guy's name now. There's a couple channels, and they all have been taken down too, amazingly. That's all they talked about. It's these images that they found from Google Maps, and have like multiple entities, different sizes, human-like, having like, I mean, like from previous cultures and all that, all in the one area, or like almost like we're like a show. There's like there's things watching us, and you look at these images, and it's not CGI, and you have to train your eye a little bit to see it, but then you say, "Holy crap! There actually are freaking like multiple entities." It's not pareidolia. It's like, that cannot be pareidolia when I'm looking at the side of that mountain. It's because it ain't the rock, it ain't a shadow on a rock, it's not how the trees are. There's literally a freaking entity, and it's like we're talking with it once again, these, for lack of a better way of saying it, it's parallel universes. Cutting in and each other, and it's almost like we just get a glimpse. It's always a glimpse, isn't it? It's always just a glimpse. It's always just a glimpse of the spirit or the alien of the Bigfoot. It's not like, I mean, there's a few people that said they've had extended periods of time having interaction with these beings. I'm talking like more than a half an hour. I'm talking, or hours, right? But for most of us, we just have glimpses of this stuff.
Yeah, glimpses of that. And even like the craft, a lot of people have looked up and seen the bottom of like the mothership. It's like, looks like a whole city upside down, they say. And some people in their environment, some people see it, some people don't. That's weird. But it's like some people have the capacity to look up and see that, and others don't. I have more inclined to believe that that's probably around a lot, and we just don't see it. We see right through it, see the atmosphere of the sky, the clouds. We just don't see it, but it's probably there.
And it's interesting too. By the way, Phil, I just see that you just said basically a similar thing. It says there, MT Mike. Sure, I get it, but perhaps we are actually blinkered. Who knows? Aliens exist in some or many forms, but are hidden by the big men, the nine. Okay, I guess I get the last part. this piece. You're speaking in code there, bro. And 9, if you like, maybe the aliens are kind of giving us a glimpse. Yeah, just something like
Yeah,
that.
and it could, and I think this is another box that we get stuck in, that they're doing the turning on and turning on off, or we just happen to end up at the same intersection somehow vibrationally and happen to be aware of one another. Maybe it's not intentional at all. We don't really know. And we have to, think that all possibilities exist on what creates that moment of awareness.
Yeah, so many variables. So it could be something as simple as just going outside and going in a car and seeing a squirrel, that kind of thing. Same kind of coincidence. I mean, it's just part of the extended environment. Or it could be a third party that says, you know what? I want to see what it's like if these guys interact for a few seconds. Although, to me, why would they do that unless what's the gain in that? But then we're not talking about the loosh again, and maybe it's these entities, they feed off the dread and fear and the panicking and the drama, because we do, we're emitting energy off us with EMFs, chemicals, whatever, all these responses from trauma and circumstances, and it seems a lot of times these things are associated with trauma, but
sometimes, but I hear a lot of stories of children who see a Bigfoot at the window, or they see an alien at the window, they see a ghost in the room, and they're so young they don't have a negative impression of this, so there isn't like fear. And often those are the people that have lifelong encounters with these things, but they're very much early on conditioned. They're very young and they see something at the foot of their bed and it's not scary to them. It's just like, oh, there was this, guy came to visit somehow kind of attitude. So sometimes it's not fearful at all. And sometimes it is. As an adult, whenever you come into the memory of something like that, it is. Sometimes seeing a Bigfoot in the woods, unexpected, and they're kind of intimidating, making lots of sounds and looking like they could be harmful to you. They're really scary, so.
Yeah, they're big. With one size, they're massive. So, especially when you get 15 feet in front of you, or at least appear to be that way, 15 feet in front of you. Or
and I remember one time I was doing an abduction, hypnotic session, regression with a woman, and I never met her before. She was coming to my house, and I remember earlier that day, in the corner of the living room of my home, I kept seeing this, like something. Didn't know for sure, and I looked, and there would be no one there, but I was getting this impression there was a really tall, dark, and it seemed like a masculine figure in the corner of that room. It wasn't scary. I would think I saw it, and then I'd look, and it wasn't there. But it was something I acknowledged several times that morning. And when she came to the house for the regression, one of the first things she talked about was, as a child, she remembered this dark, tall, black, figure that was in her bedroom at night, and it was very scary to her. And this was, what she was going to tell me about. And so there's several things that was never scary to me. And even when she left, it's like I didn't anticipate this thing would be around, if that was even what I was seeing. But I was definitely aware of something there. But it was like she was afraid of this. I could have just been picking up on this as what she was going to tell me when she came, because I sometimes will do that. Or it could be there was an energy, a real being that showed up at my house, and I could just perceive it only in kind of this eye, out of the corner of my eye kind of thing. I don't know for sure what that was, but I had no fear of it. It didn't seem to be intimidating to me. It seemed to be part of her story, not mine. I don't know where that fits into what we're talking about, but it seems to have some bearing on it.
Yeah, it's be so many questions, and I just, it's a fascinating part. It's, the biggest thing is once you realize it's not just your imagination or other people's imagination, but there's actually something going on.
There's something there for sure. Yeah. I think
there's something going on. And if it's and the question of all is, why is there so many question marks? with this? What's the motive behind this? What's the purpose? Why can't this be so? Why can't it be clearer? You know what I mean? So, and this, but like your book says, it talks about what you mentioned. You brought up the complexities, to understand the complexities of the reality that might be happening. So, to understand the complexities. But what we want is a definitive answer to all this, don't we?
Yeah, and all I have is putting forth ideas and theories about, what we might be dealing with, but definitely things that if you kind of put it all together, it's like, no, we don't have definite answers, but I think we have to start looking beyond our prejudices and our conceived ideas about what we're dealing with in order to get more answers. And another thing is, you have the UFO community and you have the ghost hunters and you have the Bigfoot community. Those three worlds sometimes don't communicate with one another. They're not sharing pieces of information, assuming that they're dealing with a completely different thing. I think that we're dealing with something that is just over the hill, over the horizon of understanding that's not in our reality right now, but we're experiencing it right now. So I think we need to kind of join forces and put all of our findings together and maybe come up with a little bit better answer.
Absolutely. Start thinking outside the box and stop following. It's very hard to do because it becomes it all depends on how much you want to understand the mystery of the, but if it requires you to do a lot of solo work and be willing to let go of the group. I think it is a lot of times is pressure. It's social pressure is more. It's more this. We've been programmed that we have to belong to a group. If we don't belong to a group, and then we're nobodies, which I think is a big absolute lie. I think, in fact, I'll be honest with you, I've learned so much more just going solo and learning to find peace and contentment. And then people say, well, we're social animals. We certainly are, but we don't have to be compromised. And I think that's part of the problem is all this compromising instead of going through the journey and be okay with the fact that I don't have the answers. And the person next to me doesn't. So far, I haven't found anyone else that has the answers either. And that can I be okay with the fact that there just might be more questions than answers, and if anything, there is the answer that maybe matters to most of all is that we recognize that there actually is something greater than going on around us than we realized or been told. So.
I think there almost has to be. I mean, I don't think people would be having these experiences if there wasn't something. I don't find most of the people I talk to are just making something up for the sake of attention or whatever. Oftentimes they don't even want attention. But, I think they have real experiences. They have real reactions to these experiences. And I think that these entities or whatever they are have real form. And I think we just don't understand fully why or how those are coming about.
Yeah. Well, Linda, this has been a great couple hours. I'm glad to catch up with you again. I'm so impressed with you and your ambition. You're a lot tougher and a lot more dedicated than the vast majority of us, and that claim to be in this field of inquiry and investigation, right? You're a great example to all of us, and and I think that I'll definitely. Well, I know for one thing, I'll be getting your book soon, and I'll check it out. And I didn't know you were going to write a book until this week. You told me about it. So, but you can get it at Amazon.com. For those who want to contact you, Linda, what's the best way to go about that?
Well, you can find me on Facebook for sure. Easy to get a hold of. Also, I have a YouTube channel, just Linda Eastburn YouTube. It has the 350 videos on it, so go watch some of those. You'll find a lot of information on there, and I've learned, bukus about Bigfoot and other things too. I have some UFO sightings on there, shows on there as well. I have the Colorado Ranch, which is kind of like a little bit of the same things happening on that as some of the other areas that we have, lots of information about the paranormal that's happening in certain locations. And Colorado Ranch is one of those. So yeah, you can get in touch with me that way. You can also get in touch with me just through lindaeastburn@gmail.com. So send me some information and I'm happy to get back in touch with you.
So impressed with you, Linda. I'm impressed with your open-mindedness, and you're willing to like think outside the box and to start connecting the pieces, seeing the associations or those things that are between Bigfoot, UFOs, and aliens, and the spirit realm. And it's going to be people like you who are going to be willing to have these ask these questions and challenge the official narratives, the experts' explanations of things. That's going to lead us to a greater understanding. And I got a feeling that humanity is going to go in this full circle thing, where our ancestors who knew the answers to these questions, at least they had a better understanding than us today, that we're going to come back to there at some point.
I think so too. I think you're right. I think in the past there was far more knowledge of this world than what we have today.
And as far as MT Paranormal Life, Mike, thank you for joining us, and Phil, Dogman TP Hunting, and it's good to see you guys again. Once again, I will be interviewing the cameraman 8 o'clock Sunday p.m. Eastern, and we talk about the portal that the crew feel they have filmed, and all the sort of dynamics that comes to that. Phil says thank you to you as well, and so does Mike. To you, Linda, thank you, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Maybe next year sometime, maybe next winter, whatever. We'll see what's going on, see what your new insights are, what you find is new, and maybe when I'm not so tired and mumbling and all that, maybe I might have something intelligent to say.
Well, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it, and really appreciate being on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always good, isn't it? So, and I mean, I think we do. I think we have great conversations myself. So,
yeah, I do too.
You bet, man. Thank you. Yeah, and with that, folks, I'm going to end the recording. Thank you to everyone